From 415. Harvey Talks Prison. What's going on, fellas? Sorry I tapped in. I was some reason I was thinking the start time was 7:30. I screwed up. Anyways, I want to thank both Harvey and San Fran 415 for tapping in. Hopefully you guys come back and watch it. If not, I get it. I understand. I screwed up, but Harvey had to go to work, so I got caught up doing some things at work, and I didn't realize what time it was. Actually, I realized what time it was, but like I said, I thought it was 7:30. This live was set for, but it was 7:20, so I screwed up on that. So anyways, I want to thank anybody else that comes back and watches this video later on as well. And I'll give the normal spiel. If you're coming to this channel for the very first time, it'd be highly appreciated if you sub, liked, and shared the channel with your family, your folks, your gente, your peoples, your camaradas, your comrades, your buddies, your pals, however you state in your vocabulary, your friends, right? Also, feel free to comment. I respond to all the comments. So, as you can see, the title of the video is Chicago, right? And how I believe the mob from Chicago, the outfit, right? It was dubbed the outfit. I don't know if that name came from them or if it was from the media or from law enforcement, but they were dubbed the outfit, right? Chicago. Chicago, let's give a little background on Chicago. First, it was Big Jim. Hold on. Sorry about that. So anyways, like I was saying, take it back to Chicago. You got Big Jim Colosimo. He was doing things, rackets and such in the Chicago area. And then at some point, his nephew, Johnny the Fox Torrio, was sent out to Chicago along with Alphonse Capone. And eventually, I believe the story goes, they tried to move on. They made a move on Jim Colosimo, and I believe they killed him. And then Johnny Torrio took over. And then at some point, he couldn't take the heat no more, and he retired, went back to, I think he went back to Italy, and then Alphonse Capone took over sometime in the late 20s. And then, as everybody knows, Luciano ended up plotting against the two main bosses in New York, Masseria and Maranzano. First having Masseria killed, and then having Maranzano killed. And around 1931, he reshaped he made the commission and reshaped the families as far as the heads of the families. And that was 1931. And the original 7 seats were the 5 New York City families, which were at the time the Lucania family, which later turned into the Genovese family, the Profaci family, who later turned into the Colombo family, the Mangano family, which later turned into the Gambino family, the Lucchese the Reina family, which ended up turning into the Gagliano family, and now is known as the Lucchese family. And then the Bonanno family has always been the Bonanno family. Before the Bonanno family, it was the Maranzano was the head of that family, but it wasn't, he named himself the boss of bosses, and then that's when Luciano made the move against him to have him removed, and he named those five New York City families along with Buffalo, New York, which was the Magadino family, which today I don't know if it's still considered the Magadino family or is it the Darrow family, and then the family from Chicago, which was Capone, was in control by that time. 1931, there was 7 seats on the commission, the National Commission, and then I want to say it was 1959ish, somewhere around there. They added Philadelphia and they added Detroit, so it was 9 seats by that time. So everybody knows Capone was notorious. Chicago's always been notorious for what do you call that? Corruption, as far as the political corruption, police department corruption. They had police captains in their pocket, beat cops in their pocket, sergeants, lieutenants, so on and so forth. Like I said, judges were in their pockets. It's probably one of the most, for a long range of time, it probably is one of the most corrupted cities in the United States. And I would probably add New Orleans on there too. Marcello and the guy before him, Silver Dollar Sam, they had a lot of influences with PD and politics and stuff. Is that what was his name? I think his name was Huey Dunbar. I think that's what his name was. He was a congressman, and then he might have been a senator. And he was the one that through Marcello, he had the plug, and he brought the slot machines to New Orleans, Frank Costello slot machines, right? So I would say New Orleans probably big corruption as well. But let's talk about some of the. So that was the outfit. That's a little bit about the outfit. The first couple of bosses. Then you had Frank Nitti was Capone's underboss, and then he ran the family shortly, and then he was ousted by. I think the story goes that he would put big time pressure on him to take a case, and instead of him taking the case, going back to prison, he killed himself right on the railroad tracks or something like that. Excuse me. Then enter Paul the waiter Rica, and Anthony Big Tuna or Joe Batters Accardo. And Joe Batters Accardo, Rica kind of faded out a little bit, and then Accardo ended up running the family pretty much for about 45 years, all the way up until pretty much his death in 92 or 93. He died. Even when he didn't look like he was running things, he had a front boss, as Sam Giancana and a couple other ones. He still was really in total control from behind the scenes, which I think that's where the Genovese got their, front boss look from Chicago. So fast forward to the gangs in Chicago. I think a lot of the gangs in Chicago, they kind of, at first, they were about helping their people. You know what I'm saying? They would have food drives and education programs and job programs such as that. Because just like with most organizations, when they start for their people, by the people, right? But unfortunately, it always ends up happening where they end up, extorting their own people or oppressing their own people. You know what I'm saying? That's usually how it goes with most of the organizations when it comes to racial or down racial lines and such. But you got and the reason why I say they had a big influence on the gangs in Chicago is because you got the People's Nation, you got the Folk Nation, right? They both were established in 1978. So when it comes to the Folk Nation, they're usually 6-point star, David, and these are 4 of the main 4 guys that were influential on creating Folk Nation back in '78. Was Larry Hoover, David Barksdale, Jose Sereno, and Richard Medina, right? And some of the gangs that fall up under Folk Nation are the Latin folk familias, which are Almighty Ambrose Nation, Imperial Gangsters, Insane Pope Nation, Latin Eagle Nation, Simon City Royals, Gangster Disciples, Gangster 2-6 Nation, Sin City Boy Nation, Spanish Cobra Nation, Insane Gangsters, Satan Disciple Nation, City Night Nation, Latin Disciple Nation, Black King Cobras, Black Disciple Nation, La Raza Nation, Latin Dragons Nation, Latin Soul Nation, Spanish GD Nation, and then you got the People's Nation started also in '78, 5-point star, right? You got the Vice Lords, the Bishop, the Spanish Lords, the Black P Stones, the Four Corner Hustlers, Latin Kings, Almighty Saints, Native Mob, I guess they're out of Minneapolis, Almighty Gaylords, Insane Popes from the South Side, Latin Counts, Mickey Cobras, and the guys who were influential in creating this People's Nation was Jeff Ford of El Rukins, which are now known as Black P Stones, Bobby Gore of the Vice Lords, and Gustavo King Gino Colon of the Latin Kings. So the reason why I say they got influence is because they created like somewhat of a commission. They fall up under this nation, either the folks or the peoples, and that way when they go into the system, they're protected. Like in other words, it doesn't matter if you're a white gang or a black gang or Latino gang, Puerto Rican gang, you fall up under the People's Nation or the Folk Nation, and you're protected. Even if nobody's from your gang, that's actually your actual gang is there. Somebody from your nation is there. You know what I mean? And excuse me.
And it's a form of like a board of directors, kind of, I guess, in a sense. Like I said, the commission. There was rules. If there was something happened, and your leader from your gang would get with that leader of that gang. If you guys run the same People's Nation or the Folk Nation, and you would figure it out and try to squash it or whatever. You know what I mean? I just think that the gangs in Chicago, and I think as well as Chicago, Detroit as well, and I even would put St. Louis and Milwaukee in this category, as they kind of mimic the Sicilians, the Italians. You know what I mean? As far as being a gangster, they looked at gangster as being a gangster. In other words, a gangster, Italian, Sicilian gangster, a wise guy. They mimic themselves after that, and different than the gangs from California. The gangs from California were more, same concept originally. As far as maybe if you didn't have a full household, and you had maybe your father wasn't there, then you go to the streets to look for other kids like yourself, and hang out, and then eventually it procrastinates, and it becomes something more, as far as getting in trouble, doing petty stuff, beer runs and such things like that, spray painting and things like that. But eventually it becomes somewhat of organized deal right there. A lot of gangs, Chicago, they've been hit with RICO charges. Even gangs in California as well. As well as across the nation. Some of these gangs that are from Chicago ventured out to other, like I mentioned, Detroit, St. Louis, Milwaukee. Some of them are even in like South Carolina. All the southern states, the southeast states. Georgia, maybe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some in Georgia. There's some in Tennessee. Florida, North Carolina. They got around. Same thing with the California gangs. They're the Southsiders, Sureños. They're all over the United States now. The MS-13, the MS is all over the United States. They're probably in about 25, 30 different states. So they, people moved and they took their neighborhood, their gang with them, and they started it up wherever they moved. And that's why they got guys from all over the place in the United States that are either gangs that originally started in Chicago or gangs that originally started in California, LA. And originally I don't just say LA, I say California, because you got gangs in Seattle, like Washington, Oregon, Utah, Arizona, Georgia, Colorado, that they're Northern California gangs. You know what I mean? And they've migrated and transplanted in other states. You know what I mean? So it ain't, you can't just say LA gangs, but I mean, when it comes to Crips and Bloods, of course they originated in LA. Sureño gangs originated in LA, down south, Southern California. And then of course the GDs, Vice Lords, P-Stones, Latin Kings are all over the place, and they're huge. And even though the mother gang of the Kings are in Chicago, are from Chicago, they're huge in New York. They're pretty big in Jersey. They're pretty big in Philly. Pretty big in I think they have some in Baltimore. There's some in Boston. There's some in. I'm pretty sure there's some in Connecticut. I know Florida has them. I know they're in Detroit. I know they're in Milwaukee. I'm not sure about Kansas City, and I know they have Latin Kings in Texas. OC 714, what up, man? And even the Black Keystone Rangers, they migrated to California. Which, if you guys remember that movie, the neighborhood's called the Jungle. If you remember that movie from Training Day, when that neighborhood they drive into, where it's one way in, one way out, and the guy's on top of the roof, and he's got the pigeons. So that was cats that are from there. It's called the Jungle, but it's also Black P-Stones. They're Bloods, and they originated from Chicago when it came west. I don't really hear about P-Stones being in other states like South states, Southeast states. Like I've heard, GDs, and I heard Vice Lords for sure. Those I want, I could be mistaken about that, but majority of the time when I hear other states speaking about the system, prison system, you usually hear GDs and you hear Vice Lords, and of course Latin Kings that are elsewhere. You know what I mean? If anybody later or comes in now has any input about that or can lace me up on that, let me know where I'm wrong or whatever. Go ahead. I appreciate it. But as far as I know, from all of the videos I've heard, and I've heard guys from Virginia, I've heard guys from Missouri, and it's usually always either GD or Vice Lords, and of course Latin Kings. But I'm talking about the Black gangs. I can't say that I hear P-Stones. There probably are though. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, I don't know, a lot of people are aware, but Chicago back in the day, a lot of people moved to Chicago from the South, from Virginia, from different places down south, Mississippi, Alabama. A lot of people moved to Chicago. And so just imagine if you moved up to Chicago, a lot of families probably moved back down to the South when, say, a lot of the car industry crashed, right? In Chicago and Detroit, and, all those areas, they probably moved back to the South, different states, and they probably took back the Gangster Disciples and the Vice Lords and all that back with them. You know what I mean? Because if you hear a lot of people from Chicago, especially back in the day, you can hear that country talk. You know what I mean? It is what it is, So I think that those gangs mimic a lot of what they knew of Al Capone and them, as real, wise guys, as good fellas or mafiosos, however they stated, or however they, the word they used when they described these guys from Chicago. I really believe that they mimic, it was obviously it's a different culture, Chicago from California, as far as, yeah, not the violence. Oh, it's on and cracking. It's popping over there and in LA. But what I meant by that was like the style. The style's different. The way of dress. You know what I mean? And when you see a lot of the old school pictures of the guys from Chicago, gang members from the late '60s and '70s, they had more of a gangster look to them. The way they dressed. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, of course, California was, when it came, even with the Bloods and Crips at one point, they were wearing Dickies and Davis, and they were just kind of cholo-ish, kind of at one point or another, definitely different culture, different style, to say the least, But I think I strongly believe, and I've heard this said from other people, especially cats from Chicago. I've heard it at least 2 or 3 different occasions that they are gang, like, you know, they more mimicked after the outfit, you know, that mentality, more, you know, divide and conquer, you know, ally yourself up with people, you know, because everybody knows violence is bad for business. Um, you know, even though at the time the Italians and the Italians and the Irish, the Bugs Moran gang, the I can't think of the other brothers' name, the guys, old something brothers, they were going at it, you know, north side, south side for all the, you know, control of the liquor and stuff, things like that. And you know, it is what it is, you know what I mean? But this is just gonna be a short little video, 20-minute, 21, 22-minute video. I appreciate again OC 714 tapping in, San Fran 415er, and Harvey Talks Prison for tapping in. And I appreciate everybody else that taps in later and rewatches the video. And with that being said, if this is the first time you're coming to this channel, it'd be highly appreciated if you sub, like, and share the channel. Also, feel free to comment. I respond back to all the comments. With that being said, it's your favorite bean-eating mofo, fresh off the banana boat, Big Lou, tapping on out with What It Do with Big Lou.